Rotus, take it away.
Good morning, Rufai. Good Friday morning to you.
Yes.
Good morning, Bimbai. Good morning, Adifemi. And good Friday morning to all our viewers out there. We're starting in Nigeria. This day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record. And we're beginning, of course, with the bank stocks. So we have to start there. So we've been tracking these. You can see, again, just to recap, Friday is when the CBN said you all have to stop, at least temporarily, stop paying dividends, bonuses to executives, and also, making investments in foreign subsidiaries because of the forbearance, situation, phasing that out. Monday, bank stocks fell. Tuesday, they were still largely bearish. It was from Wednesday when we started getting press releases from first Zenith Bank, then Access Bank, Access Corp, and then also First Holdco as well, which was just yesterday. So you saw a rally Wednesday. The rally continued on Thursday. So this day, of course, focusing particularly on share purchases from Zenith Bank, from its executives. So there it is there, top of the masthead. Bank stocks rally, as we just showed you, as Jim Ovia, chair, founder of Zenith Bank, and also Dr. Ada Omeoji, Group CEO, Group MD and CEO, acquired shares worth 3.3 billion. So she apparently purchased them in the open market. He purchased them through they were both direct and indirect purchases. And well, it's supposed to, they purchased these shares between June the 10th and the 18th. So they started making these purchases before, and this is fully disclosed to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, because this is a practice across, all exchanges across the world, where executives, when they make purchases of shares, and they disclose that to the public. And look, for me, it shows that if when executives are buying their own shares, they have skin in the game, and they're essentially. And again, this was on the 10th. This was before the CBN put out that notice. So even when shares were falling on Monday, as we showed you on Tuesday, those purchases continued through those 2 days. So again, 3.3 billion total from those two executives. They have skin in the game, basically, and also showing I guess, confidence in the fundamentals of the bank, even with this temporary blip of this forbearance phase out. First Holdco, remember, this day newspaper did have that headline. This was 2 or 3 days ago, with respect to their $887 million exposure with respect to forbearance. I mean, remember, Zenith had 1.6 billion. Another banks had exposures there. So First Holdco, I think, is the third bank. This is the holding company, of parent, of course, of First Bank, which is a subsidiary on the banking side, putting out a notice that, okay, just like Zenith pointed out and like Access pointed out as well, they plan to exit, forbearance by the deadline of June the 30th. Now, again, as we were parsing through these things, Zenith was forthcoming and saying, listen, as far as the single obligor limits, which of course refers to that 20% cap of shareholder funds that cannot be breached when it comes to borrowing to a single entity. Zenith Bank came out and said, listen, there was one borrower who breached that. We're trying to clean that up. Zenith also said we have 2 facilities, credit facilities. We're trying to clean those up. Access didn't really give any details, but they said, listen, there's some credit facilities out there. We will clear them up. First Holdco did come out and say that there was a foreign currency loan that was made to, in fact, I think it was 2 foreign currency loans, 2 actually, that they made in terms of their credit facilities that were impacted by the devaluation of the Naira. So you can imagine making a loan to an entity in US dollars at 400 Naira per dollar. The Naira gets devalued to 1,005 per dollar. Now that entity has to pay that back. So that is what they came forward to mention in their press release. They said they'll make provisions for it. They also talked about a syndicate loan. Remember, we had Olumide Shole here, who of course is of Renaissance Capital Africa, who defined a syndicated loan. I asked him to define it for our viewers, where if you have a single entity that wants to lend a large amount of money, if I'm a business, I want to lend a lot of money, I want to Rufai to fund it. Rufai says, okay, this is pretty large, it's going to exceed my threshold. So Zimbai, Adifemi, we'll share the loan now, thank you. So this day does, everybody should read this article, it's pretty good in this day. They mentioned that this syndicated loan is to ITO, which is the oil and indigenous oil and gas firm. And while First Holdco said that they are making provisions for the loan, and when you make a provision, it means, listen, if in case it goes bad, I will make a provision for it. LLP is loan loss provision. This they did point out that, listen, GT already made a provision for it. Zenith and other banks within that syndicate loan. So there are some questions as to how this can be resolved going forward, because I think ITO is in some dispute with Shell. But by and large, the trend here is that each of the notices that are being put out by the banks is that, listen, we will be able to clean all this up by the 30th of June, which is not very far away. So today is the 20th, right? So we've got 10 days to go. So we'll see what the regulator says going forward on that regard. But again, bank shares are up. We'll see how they conclude for this week. In other news, just very quickly, just to run through other things. Oil prices, you've already talked about Donald Trump giving that 2-week notice. So oil prices kind of fell because of they dipped a bit, but they're still elevated. Asian stocks were pretty volatile in trading. There's a number of things coming out of Asia. So you can see China down, Japan down because inflation came up. Let's just run through some news coming out of Asia. So the banking shares were mixed in the Asian markets. China kept its loan prime rates, the People's Bank of China, in place. No changes. The 1-year LPR, which impacts businesses and households at 3%. The 5-year is really more for mortgages. They cut last month. No change. Maybe the markets were expecting more stimulus there. Japan, inflation is still elevated. 38 months now above the 2% threshold for the Bank of Japan. You can see headline 3.5. April was 3.6. Core removes volatile food. Core, as you see at 3.3, there removes energy and food. So it's still above the 2% threshold. Rice apparently is, triple-digit increases in Japan. 101% jump in May. April was 98. It's a very expensive sushi. So that's part of the pressure on food there. I think also the trade. Look, with all this talk of Iran and Israel, there's still a trade deal that needs to be sorted out. And U.S. is talking to so many countries. This is Ryusoi Akazawa, Japan. Yeah, he's economic revitalization minister. He says we're looking for the possibility of a deal with the U.S. in ministerial level negotiations, but the outlook remains in a fog. I think they're going on their 5th or 6th, or I think 7th round of meetings now. No trade deal yet with Japan. I think to the UK, the borrowing costs were held in place. The Bank of England held costs at 4.25. But the UK economy is, the hard data is troublesome for Rachel Reeves and Sir Keir Starmer. Retail sales were underwater for May. You can see the red there. There was 2.7% month on month. 1.3% year on year. So you have people, pulling back on spending. And one of the data points that came out is borrowing costs. That's a 19-year high. 35.7% on credit card borrowing costs. So that's still elevated despite rate cuts that we saw, even though they held yesterday over in the UK. And what else is going on today? I think that is it. Oh yeah. So yeah, the federal government's technology team pretty much praising Dangote for, again, remember how I told you you need a private sector buy-in when you have these government initiatives. And also, I think I'll pull this up on Monday or so. The impact that Dangote's refinery has had on our imports, I think it's been reported, but we did 1.7 trillion in the first quarter of this year. 1.7 trillion in fuel imports. It was 3.8. So it's 54% decline basically in fuel imports thanks to the impact of the Dangote refinery.
But also the big problem is we don't have enough crude to give to Dangote refinery.
Right. So that
so
needs
guess
to be
what
sorted
happens? He still keeps getting crude from America. He imports crude. He cracks it here and all of that. And the reason why we don't have enough crude swaps.
The swaps, yeah.
The swap deals.
And so on.
Secondly, we also have a problem. We're not producing enough. We've not been able to meet all the benchmarks. Lokobri was saying the other day we're going to be doing 2 million barrels per day by December. We are not anywhere there. We have Operation Gazelle. We have many things going on.
Yeah.
So if we want more refineries, a couple of years down the line, BUA will come on stream.
Yep.
When BUA comes into the market, if we can't give Dangote, how can we then give BUA? So we need to be able to rejig and rethink our ecosystem for oil production. There needs to be some massive investment. I'm happy Bonga is coming up on stream.
So I was going to mention that.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
You're going to be having I think that was even Bonga North or thereabout. Yeah. There's another FIU, final investment, FID, final investment decision coming up on another part of the Bonga. Yep. If that comes on stream, we might have to look at new wells. Question is, where are wells like Kolmani? I thought they had a big launch around Kolmani.
Yeah, well,
where are wells like Kolmani?
Yeah.
Because we need more wells, to be able to come in at this point in time. Also, one story I wanted to bring.
Yeah.
There are now fears that Iran might push to actually have skirmishes around the Strait of Hormuz that ships about 20 to 22 million barrels per day. And if that is affected with other production sites, we might have an increased blip. $75 per barrel. In fact, Goldman, I think it was Goldman that was saying this morning, I could notch up to even 90 worst case scenarios. And I think what we should wait for is this next 2 weeks, TACO is telling us about.
Yeah.
Because TACO says we should wait.
Remind our viewers what TACO stands for.
TACO is Trump now.
Trump always chickens out.
Chickens out, so it's TACO. So
but real quick, see, that Strait of Hormuz, if the reason why they've hesitated is because they will be shooting themselves in the foot, because much of their exports go out there, and they would be angering China and Russia as well.
At this point in time,
if they get desperate, right?
Everybody can get desperate.
If they get desperate and the US attacks, they will just,
TACO is saying we should wait for 2 weeks now.
2 weeks,
God knows what will happen in that 2 weeks.
Yeah.
TACO Trump.
Yeah.
I'm glad you also brought up Russia and China. I mentioned it earlier, and the fact that they're enjoying this sort of discounted, sanctioned oil that comes out of Iran with the arrangements that they have going on. We'll see how that plays out. What caught my attention is the federal government's tech committee referring to the Dangote refinery as the industrial revolution in Nigeria. And, we can't talk about this enough, right? It was just a few weeks ago when the GDP numbers came out, and Dr. Almona of LCCI had said that services basically drove 57% of that GDP growth.
Right.
Now, how does an economy leapfrog to that? I consistently debunk leapfrogging, because especially in this economy, what you find is you find higher levels of unemployment because we haven't done the human capital development to be able to just jump from what is required from traditional economy.
Yeah.
We need that industrialization, more of this industrialization, so we can upscale our human capital and then get to the service-based economy, or else we're going to have this economy filled with the bankers with these big numbers, huge revenue, huge profits, but there's a big gap because a huge part of your population is unemployable because they can't fit into a service economy. So when I heard industrial revolution, it's never too late. I know the rest of the world went through it a while ago, but it's never too late. I hope to just see more of these sort of industrial revolutionary initiatives moving forward. They're big ticket items, but we can do it.
We can, certainly.
Very quickly, because I know we're running out of time. I think it's a very good thing to see what has been happening with Nigerian banks. So I know I agree, and I like what you said about how both Jimovia and Dr. Adamoji buying shares shows that they have skin in the game, shows that they are invested in the success of the business, and it shows that it's something that happened organically, being that they started this purchase or these purchases on the 10th, which was before the central bank released its notice. So kudos to them. Let's see how it goes.
That's it. That's what it's about.
Thank you guys so much.
All right.
Lovely Friday.